The sterile hum of the observation chamber filled the air, a soft but constant reminder of the high-tech environment surrounding them. The chamber was suspended in the heart of a research facility on the alien world of Zorath, a planet of endless red deserts and pale, twin moons that hung in the sky like silent sentinels. Massive glass windows lined the walls, offering a panoramic view of the barren landscape, where heat waves shimmered and long shadows stretched across the cracked earth. Inside, the researchers watched intently. The only thing moving in the chamber was the human female, Kira Matthews, who sat calmly reading a book. Her surroundings were foreign, her situation extraordinary, yet she remained calm, as though the walls of the glass enclosure and the numerous alien eyes tracking her every move were simply a passing inconvenience. She knew they were watching. She knew they were testing her. But for now, she just needed to focus on something familiar, something human. "She has no idea how much danger she's in," muttered Talvik, his voice a deep, resonant hum that reverberated through the air. His four violet eyes narrowed as he stared at the data streaming across the screens in front of him. His hands, long and segmented like the limbs of a creature accustomed to manipulation, danced across the interface, pulling up more readings, more data points. "Humans are absurd," he remarked again, his frustration mounting. "Completely, utterly absurd." "Your obsession with this species borders on unprofessional, Talvik," Director Pella said, her voice smooth yet laced with skepticism. Her scales shifted from a muted teal to a disapproving shade of green as she leaned forward, her reptilian features reflecting the dim lights of the lab. "The Galactic Science Council expected results 3 cycles ago." Talvik waved one of his secondary limbs dismissively, a gesture that carried more weight than it seemed. "The Council can wait. What we're discovering here changes everything. Humanity is unlike anything we've ever encountered. And this," he tapped a series of rapidly changing symbols on the holographic display, "this proves it." The chamber's glass barrier shimmered, showing Kira Matthews, the human subject, sitting unaffected by the tests they'd conducted. She turned a page in her book, clearly unaware of the alien scientists' growing obsession. What they had discovered about her species so far was beyond comprehension, human resilience specifically. "Look at this," Talvik continued, now showing a 3-dimensional projection that expanded in front of them. It displayed the intricate network of Kira's neural pathways, with brightly colored biochemical markers lighting up as they monitored her reactions to their experiments. "We subjected her to pain, intense, calculated pain. Her body should be reacting with extreme distress, yet her stress hormones barely spiked. How does she endure it?" Director Pella's interest peaked, her skin shifting to a deep, reflective purple. "That can't be right," she murmured, focusing on the data. "I've run the analysis 13 times. The numbers don't lie. You're telling me this human isn't responding as we would expect." Talvik leaned in, his multiple eyes studying the data with an intensity that bordered on obsession. "Exactly. This human is undergoing what should be excruciating pain by any sentient species standards, yet she is hardly affected by it. In fact, she seems to thrive despite it." Jay, a research assistant with elongated nasal ridges, let out a hissing snort. "That's the 4th time you've said that this week," he muttered, clearly unconvinced by Talvik's constant reiteration of this discovery. Talvik ignored the remark. "But it's true, look at her. By all biological logic, humans should be overwhelmed by their environment. They lack the natural defenses of other sentient species. Their skin is thin. They have no natural armor. They are weak by design, and yet they survive and they endure." John, another researcher, stared at the live feed of Kira's calm demeanor. "She doesn't look that special," he observed, tapping his chin thoughtfully. "Just a standard bipedal design, inefficient respiratory system, exposed nerve endings everywhere, nothing remarkable." Talvik's secondary limbs twitched. "That's precisely the point. Her body is not designed to withstand the extremes that she endures, yet she does," she continues. Director Pella sat back, contemplating. "And what exactly does this tell us?" Talvik hesitated for a moment, his voice lowering. "Humans possess a unique adaptability, an unyielding spirit. They experience pain more acutely than we do, yet they don't stop. Most sentient species evolve to avoid pain, to seek comfort and security above all else. Humans, however, seek something more." Before Pella could respond, a soft chime echoed through the chamber. "Extraction team returning from Earth requesting docking clearance," announced the station's AI. "Excellent timing," Talvik remarked with barely contained excitement. "Perhaps they have brought us new insights. Fresh data could illuminate more about this species' strange ability to endure. The doors to the observation chamber slid open with a soft hiss, revealing Marvis, a field agent wearing a sealed environmental suit. His helmet was still locked in place, a sign of his recent return from an off-world mission. "Contamination complete," Marvis announced, his voice muffled by the suit's filters. "You look like you've seen a Crowian deathworm," Jay remarked with a slight chuckle, clearly trying to break the tension. "Earth missions are supposed to be simple observation. What happened?" Marvis placed a data crystal onto the central console, and it activated with a soft hum. The images it projected were unsettling, yet deeply intriguing. They showed humans, dozens, then hundreds of them, running across varied terrain. Some smiled, others grimaced, but they all kept moving. Director Pella looked perplexed. "I don't understand," she said. "They are just locomoting for 42 kilometers." Marvis nodded, his expression visibly troubled. "Voluntarily, for fun." A stunned silence fell over the room. Talvik's eyes widened, his mind racing. How could this be? They are willing to endure." His words faltered as the footage zoomed in on a human female, her body battered, her skin torn, blood seeping from gashes on her knees and palms. John frowned. "Surely she stopped after injury," he said, glancing at the data feed. "No," Marvis replied gravely. "She kept going. Another 12 kilometers despite the injuries, and she wasn't alone. We documented multiple humans pushing themselves past their physical limits, with injuries that should have incapacitated them." Pella's skin flickered with disbelief. "But why?" Talvik, still absorbing the shocking footage, narrowed his eyes. "Because they don't stop. They never stop. They push forward. Their ability to endure seems not to be driven by biological need, but by something deeper." The room fell silent as they all watched the human marathoners continue, despite the obvious pain and strain. No alien species they had encountered had ever exhibited such resilience. Finally, Talvik spoke, his voice filled with awe and confusion. "We need to know why. Why do they continue when every other species would break? What drives them?" And the question echoed through the chamber like a challenge. What makes humans unyielding? The research facility hummed with an eerie stillness as the alien researchers gathered in the command room, watching the live feed from the observation chamber. Talvik's secondary limbs fidgeted with anticipation as he paced, his mind racing with questions that no alien scientist had ever dared to ask. Why did humans endure pain instead of avoiding it, like every other sentient species in the galaxy? What was it about their biology, or perhaps their minds, that pushed them to continue to go further despite the agony? Director Pella stood silently by the console, her skin flickering between shades of uneasy yellow and green. "We need answers," she said, her voice tight. "The Council has been waiting for results, and we've barely scratched the surface." Talvik turned to face her, his 4 violet eyes flashing with determination. "No, Pella, we've found the surface. We've only just begun to understand what lies beneath it." She narrowed her gaze but said nothing, her attention drawn back to the screen where Kira Matthews, subject H394, was still seated in her chamber, reading her book as though nothing in the galaxy had changed. "Her heart rate is stable," John observed, glancing at the monitor in front of him. "No signs of stress. Her readings are almost abnormal for a human." "Exactly," Talvik responded. "The normal rules do not apply to humans. They endure what would break most sentient species, and yet they seem almost invincible." "Or perhaps," Director Pella began, her voice darkening with skepticism, "they simply haven't reached their limit yet." Talvik bristled. "It's more than that. It's something deeper, something I can't quite grasp." He turned back to the data streams, his eyes locked onto the fluctuating readings of Kira's neural patterns. "She is a puzzle we're just beginning to understand." The observation chamber door slid open, and Kira Matthews stepped out, her footsteps soft but confident. The human's eyes scanned the room before settling on the glass barrier. She had been through countless tests, temperature extremes, pressure fluctuations, endurance exercises designed to break even the toughest of species, but none of it had fazed her. Kira had endured it all, even when the machines and the aliens had expected her to break. "You wanted to speak to me?" Kira's voice was steady, though there was a quiet determination in her gaze. Talvik stood still, studying her, his violet eyes narrowed, his multiple limbs twitching with excitement. Yes, Kira Matthews, I have some questions for you I need to understand. Why? Kira raised an eyebrow but sat down across from him. Why what? Why do you continue? Talvik asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Why do you humans push yourselves beyond your limits? You have no natural defenses, your skin is thin, your bones brittle, yet you endure pain that would cripple any other species. Why do you do it? Kira took a deep breath, considering his question carefully. She had heard it before. Humans always got curious about the things they didn't understand. Pain, endurance, suffering, it was all part of who they were, but how could she explain it to a species that had never felt it? I don't know, she said softly. I think it's because we have something to prove, to ourselves, to the world around us. Pain isn't the end for us, it's a message. It tells us that we're alive, that we can keep going. Talvik's secondary limbs twitched with interest. So you embrace pain as something positive, something that fuels you. Kira nodded slowly. We don't look at it the same way you do. We don't avoid it. We learn from it. We adapt. Pain is temporary. It's the lessons we take from it that matter. The room was silent as Talvik processed her words. So you believe that enduring pain makes you stronger? Kira leaned forward, her eyes locking with his. No, it makes us more aware. Pain is just a reminder, a warning, but it doesn't define us. What defines us is how we use it, how we move forward despite it. Talvik's mind raced. He had never encountered a species so paradoxical. Everything about humanity screamed vulnerability, yet here they were, thriving despite their biological weaknesses. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that he was missing something. The key to understanding their resilience was right in front of him, and it wasn't just in their bodies, it was in their minds. Fascinating, Talvik muttered. Your species does not simply survive pain, you transcend it. Director Pella interrupted, her tone cutting through the growing tension. Enough theorizing, Talvik. We have the data. We need results. The Council is growing impatient. What do you suggest? Talvik turned sharply, his violet eyes flashing. I suggest we take this further. We need more subjects. We need to understand how humans process pain across different environments, different circumstances. Only then will we truly grasp the essence of their resilience. Pella hesitated, but there was something in Talvik's intensity that convinced her. Very well, but if this goes wrong... It won't, Talvik assured her, his voice full of conviction. I'm certain now humans are something else. They can endure more than we've ever imagined. Later that day, the extraction team returned from their latest mission on Earth, bringing with them another human subject, Marcus Herrera, a laborer from Earth's southern continent. He was a burly man in his mid-30s, his muscular frame slightly softened by a life of physical labor, his brow furrowed in confusion as he stepped into the research facility. The scientists had prepared another chamber for the new subject, a larger space designed for comparative testing between him and Kira. As the doors slid open, Kira glanced up, her eyes narrowing in recognition. The new arrival was human, just like her, but different in so many ways. Who are you? Kira asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. Marcus, the man replied with a half grin. Marcus Herrera, looks like we're in the same mess, huh? Kira smiled faintly, stepping closer. Seems like it, but don't worry, you'll get used to the strange alien tests soon enough. Great, Marcus muttered, eyeing the alien researchers warily. What do they want with us this time? Kira shrugged, motioning toward the observation deck. Something to do with how we handle pain, I think. Fantastic, Marcus said dryly, as if life isn't hard enough already. The researchers began the new round of tests, each one more invasive than the last. But as the minutes ticked by, Kira and Marcus began to form an unspoken bond, both aware of the growing tension and the strange, underlying connection that humans shared in adversity. As the testing progressed, the researchers started comparing their responses. They tested Kira and Marcus against extreme temperatures, pressure, and even simulated combat scenarios. Both humans endured, pushing through the discomfort, their bodies screaming for rest, but their minds focused on the task at hand. But the real test came when Talvik, John, and the rest of the team began to push them to their limits. They were subjected to unimaginable pain, heat that scorched their skin, pressure that crushed their bones, and electrical currents that surged through their bodies. And still they pressed on. The chamber was silent, save for the rhythmic hum of the lab's monitoring equipment. The walls vibrated slightly as the researchers observed the human subjects, Kira Matthews and Marcus Herrera, both strapped into chairs designed to simulate intense environmental stress. On the screen before them, their vital signs flickered in real time, fluctuating with the tests being run. Talvik stood at the center of the room, his four violet eyes narrowed in concentration. His secondary limbs, slender and precise, danced over the console, adjusting settings and analyzing data as it streamed in. Kira's face, though bruised and scraped from earlier tests, remained composed. Marcus, beside her, was equally silent, though beads of sweat dotted his forehead. Their bodies were under duress, but their minds were elsewhere. "Temperature increase in Sector 2, John reported, his voice distant, detached. The temperature in the chamber was now well beyond the survivable range for most species. The air shimmered, thick and oppressive, as the heat slowly climbed toward the limit that even the most resilient beings could withstand. Critical threshold approaching. Kira exhaled sharply, her eyes flickering to the display showing her body's core temperature, 104 degrees F, then 106 degrees F, rising steadily. Her lips curled into a faint smile despite the sweat trickling down her neck. "It's just numbers," she whispered to herself. "It's just heat." Marcus, struggling against the unbearable warmth, glanced at her, his voice strained. "How the hell are you still calm?" Kira's eyes met his, steady, unwavering. "Because I know it's just another test. They want to break us, but we don't break." On the observation deck above, Talvik observed intently. His eyes were fixed on the humans, analyzing every twitch, every shift in posture. He had witnessed their extraordinary tolerance to pain before, but this was beyond any test they had subjected other species to. "Remarkable," Talvik muttered, his voice low with awe. "They adapt. Their bodies react differently to stress, but they adapt. They don't fold under pressure." Director Pella, standing behind him, crossed her arms, her expression skeptical. "They're enduring pain, yes, but they're human. How does that make them different from any other species who pushes through adversity?" Talvik glanced at her, his expression almost dismissive. "You still don't understand, do you? It's not just about enduring, it's about how they endure. They don't avoid discomfort, they use it." Pella raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Talvik turned back to the screen. "Pain is supposed to be a warning, a way for a species to know when they are in danger, but humans, they don't see it that way. Pain doesn't stop them, it pushes them forward." As the heat in the chamber continued to rise, Marcus gasped, his face contorting in visible pain. "Okay, that's enough. I can't take this much longer." He strained against the restraints, his chest heaving as sweat dripped into his eyes. Kira's voice was a calm anchor in the midst of the storm. "Stay with it. We're here to show them that we're more than they think we are." Marcus clenched his jaw, trying to focus. His mind raced with thoughts of his family, his life back on Earth. The pain was unbearable, yet he gritted his teeth and forced himself to stay still, to endure. Across the room, John's fingers hovered above the controls, ready to increase the pressure. "They're at the brink of collapse," he said, glancing toward Talvik. "Should we push them further?" Talvik hesitated, his violet eyes flickering with an inner conflict. The human subjects had already surpassed what should have been their limits, yet they refused to break. The question now wasn't whether they could endure more, but whether the humans themselves would allow their bodies to be pushed past the point of no return. "Increase the pressure," Talvik ordered, his voice almost absent. "We need more data. I need to understand how they survive this." The chamber's temperature spiked, and the pressure sensors started to flash red. The heat was almost unbearable now, but Kira, calm and collected, focused on her breath. Her military training had taught her many things, but perhaps the most important lesson was this: never give up. She looked at Marcus, his face twisted in agony. "Just hold on," she whispered. "Focus on something else. We're doing this together." Marcus gritted his teeth, trying to push past the pain. He thought of the work crews back home, of the people who depended on him. He thought of his ex-wife, of the mistakes he'd made, and how he'd never get a chance to fix them. But now was different. Now there was purpose. Talvik watched, his four eyes blinking in rapid succession. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. How could they continue? And then, in the midst of their suffering, it happened. Kira's brainwaves spiked, an anomaly that Talvik had never seen before. It wasn't pain she was feeling, it was clarity. The human mind was functioning in ways he couldn't comprehend, processing pain as if it were an entirely different experience. "Fascinating," Talvik breathed. "She's processing the pain as data, as information. Her neural patterns are..." reorganizing. Director Pella turned sharply to Talvik, alarm in her voice. What does that mean? Are they in danger? Talvik didn't answer immediately. His mind was racing, piecing together the data, the readings. It was like nothing he had seen before. They're not in danger, not in the way we understand it. They've redefined pain. It's not an obstacle for them, it's a tool. Kira could feel the pressure in her head intensifying. The heat, the pressure, the constant pricking of her body's limits. It was all just information, and she knew exactly what to do with it. The world seemed to slow as she focused, using the pain as a guide rather than a barrier. Her heart beat steadily, unperturbed by the environment around her. Marcus was still struggling, his body shaking with the effort to hold on. But Kira wasn't struggling anymore. The pain was just a signal, a reminder that she was alive, that she was human. And that was enough. Meanwhile, on the observation deck, John, Director Pella, and the rest of the research team watched the readings on their monitors. Kira's heart rate remained steady, even as the pressure reached catastrophic levels. Her neural pathways were beginning to form new patterns, her body no longer reacting with fear, but with awareness. She wasn't just surviving. She was evolving in real time. She's not the same as the others, Pella said, a hint of awe creeping into her voice. This human is different. Talvik, still captivated, nodded slowly. Yes, she is, and Marcus too. They're learning to use pain to adapt to it. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. The final test came without warning. The researchers initiated a full-body pressure simulation, mimicking the crushing forces of deep space or an uninhabitable environment. The walls of the chamber pressed inward, the pressure building as the air grew thin. Kira's body was visibly struggling, but she never once faltered. She was, for all intents and purposes, more than human now. She was a survivor. And that was enough. The chamber felt like a tomb. Kira Matthews and Marcus Herrera were now subjected to a simulation so extreme, even the seasoned alien researchers were beginning to question if they had crossed a line. The walls of the chamber were closing in, the air growing more oppressive with every passing second. The pressure was increasing to the point where it should have been physically impossible for any being to survive without succumbing to it. And yet, they were still here, still fighting. Kira's breath came in shallow gasps. Her body was screaming at her, but her mind was calm, focused. The pressure on her chest was suffocating, and yet she found herself almost detached from it, as though she were floating above her own pain. The sensation was maddening in its clarity. Her body felt like it was crumbling, yet her mind remained unshaken. The monitoring systems were going haywire. Sensors that had been designed to track extreme physiological stress had gone berserk. Kira's vitals were a maze of conflicting data. Her heart rate was steady, but her body's physical stress indicators were spiking in ways that the researchers could not explain. The simulation had broken every known boundary of the alien species' understanding of biological endurance, and yet Kira and Marcus were still alive. Marcus was hunched over in his chair, his fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles were white. He could barely breathe through the crushing force, but he fought to keep his mind sharp. He thought of his family again, his crew back on Earth. They were depending on him even if he didn't know it. Stay with it, he thought. Stay with it for them. I can't take this much longer, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the chamber's machinery. Kira turned her head, her eyes locking with his for a brief moment. They didn't need to speak. They understood each other perfectly. Both of them were enduring the unendurable. Both of them were facing an alien world that saw their resilience as a scientific experiment. But in that moment, all that mattered was the understanding between them. She gave him a small nod. You've got this, Marcus. It wasn't just a reassurance. It was a lifeline. Marcus found new strength in her words, and despite the increasing pressure, he lifted his head, meeting her gaze. The chamber was reaching its critical point. The walls were now less than a meter away from them, the pressure mounting with each passing second. The air was thick, like liquid, and Marcus could feel his chest tightening as though his ribs might snap at any moment. He clenched his jaw, his thoughts swirling with a million possibilities. They'd been through so much already, but now they were fighting not just for survival, but for their very essence. On the observation deck, Talvik stood frozen. His 4 violet eyes were wide, and even he could not suppress the rising sense of awe and confusion. This can't be, he muttered, his voice barely audible. He stared at the feed of Kira Matthews. They're surviving. How are they still alive? John, who had been monitoring the readings, turned to Talvik, his face ashen. Her vitals! They're reaching critical levels, but she's still holding steady. Director Pella's scales shifted from green to a concerned yellow, her voice cutting through the rising tension. The pressure is beyond survivable limits for most species, Talvik. Even the Zorathian desert-born creatures would not last under this force for more than a few minutes. Talvik ignored her. His mind was racing, his scientific curiosity overpowering all else. The data before him was unprecedented, and his hunger for understanding was insatiable. He needed to understand why the humans were enduring this, how they were enduring this. I don't know, Talvik whispered again, more to himself than to the others. I don't know how they're doing it, but they are. There's something about them, something more than biology. It's their minds. The chamber doors finally opened with a soft hiss, releasing the crushing pressure and allowing the two humans to stagger out. Both were visibly shaken, their bodies covered in sweat and bruises, their breathing ragged. The alien researchers watched in stunned silence as Kira and Marcus slowly stood on their own 2 feet, each of them pushing through the weight of their own exhaustion. You've survived, John said, his voice filled with disbelief. But how? You should be unconscious, or worse. Kira steadied herself against the chair, blinking to clear the sweat and dizziness from her eyes. We don't break, she said simply, her voice hoarse but resolute. Not for you, not for anyone. Talvik, his violet eyes wide with amazement, took a cautious step toward her. Explain, he demanded, his voice a mix of awe and disbelief. How did you do it? Kira smiled faintly, though the exhaustion in her features was clear. It's not about the pain. Pain's just a message. What matters is the why, what's driving us forward. That's what gets us through it. Marcus, still catching his breath, let out a short laugh. We're not special, we just keep going, no matter how bad it gets. Talvik's mind was spinning. They do not fear pain, they embrace it, they transcend it. Their minds are evolving. And what do you think? Talvik began slowly, his voice filled with wonder, drives you to keep going despite everything. Kira met his gaze, her expression calm, almost serene. Purpose, she said simply. Purpose drives us. Back on the observation deck, Director Pella had taken a step back, her scales now a deep shade of red. She was watching the humans closely, her mind processing the implications of their resilience. Purpose, Pella murmured. You believe that pain has a purpose? Kira nodded without hesitation. It's just information, telling us where we're weak, where we need to push harder. It's not something to fear, it's something to learn from. Pella stood frozen for a moment, a sense of unease creeping into her mind. This is beyond anything we expected. Suddenly, the air was filled with the sound of chimes. The AI's voice echoed through the chamber, breaking the tense silence. Warning, intruder alert, security breach in Sector 3, unauthorized personnel detected. The lights flickered and a shrill alarm began blaring through the facility. The tension was immediate and Kira's instincts flared. She immediately stood up straighter, her mind shifting into survival mode. We're not safe here. They're coming for us. Talvik looked to Pella. What does this mean? Pella's expression darkened. It means the research facility is compromised. Someone's here who shouldn't be. Kira exchanged a glance with Marcus. They had endured the tests. They had survived the pressure. But now the game had changed. The door to the chamber slid open again. Standing in the doorway was a tall figure, cloaked in shadows. A figure who was neither alien nor human, but something else entirely. The figure in the doorway stood motionless, shrouded in darkness. It was neither human nor alien, its features distorted by the dim lighting, creating an eerie silhouette that sent a chill through the room. Kira tensed, her hand instinctively moving toward the small of her back, where she had once kept a weapon during her military days. But there was nothing there now, only the strange metallic scent of the alien facility and the sound of the blaring alarm. Who are you? Kira demanded, her voice steady, though her body was on alert. What do you want? The figure stepped into the light, revealing a humanoid form, but the details were unsettling. Its skin shimmered in shades of black and dark gray, smooth like obsidian, with eyes that glowed a faint violet. The creature was taller than any of the other aliens they had encountered, its limbs elongated and sinewy, moving with a grace that suggested both power and precision. Its face, if it could even be called a face, was a haunting mix of sharp angles and an unnerving lack of expression. I am Vin, a medical specialist, the figure said, its voice smooth but emotionless, the words cold and measured. I am here to ensure your safety. Kira and Marcus exchanged wary glances. Safety, Marcus scoffed, still catching his breath from the test. After everything we've been through, you want us to trust you. Vin's glowing eyes flickered with something, curiosity, frustration. It was hard to tell. I understand your skepticism, but you are in danger. This station is no longer secure. Where's the research team? Kira demanded, her body moving with the reflexes honed through years of training. And why are you telling us this now? What's going on? Vin hesitated, an uncharacteristic pause that only fueled Kira's suspicion. Finally, the creature spoke, its voice quieter now. There are factions within this research facility that wish to contain you, to study you further. There are others, alien and human, who believe you hold a deeper secret, one that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Marcus's face darkened. What secret? We're just human, we don't have anything to hide. Vin stepped forward, each movement deliberate as if calculating every gesture. You are wrong. You do not understand the full extent of your capabilities, of the power you possess. Humans are not just resilient, your species is uniquely adaptable. The way you process pain, the way you endure it, it is not simply a biological anomaly. It is a power that can be weaponized. Kira's stomach churned as she listened. The words seemed to echo in her mind, a stark contrast to what she had believed about herself, about humanity. She had always thought resilience was about survival, not something that could be used. So you're saying the humans are special? Marcus asked, his tone flat but tinged with suspicion. That our ability to take pain and keep going is some sort of weapon. Vin's violet eyes flickered again, this time almost as if pondering. Not just pain, it is your entire psychological framework, the way you push through adversity, adapt, overcome. It is more than a survival mechanism. It is a fundamental force, one that can alter the course of entire civilizations. Kira shook her head, her mind reeling. This is insane. You want us to believe that. This resilience is a weapon, that our ability to endure pain is some kind of galactic game-changer. Vin nodded slowly, its face expressionless. Yes, and it is why you cannot stay here. The research team wants to keep testing you, pushing you further. But you are not their experiment to dissect. You are human, and you deserve more than to be treated like a lab specimen. The air in the room thickened, and Kira could feel the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders. She had survived everything they'd thrown at her. She had endured the physical pain, the tests, the torture of uncertainty. But now, this new information, this suggestion that her species was some kind of tool, threw her into a new realm of doubt. You want us to escape? Kira asked, her voice strained but resolute. Is that it? Vin stepped aside, revealing a narrow door that led deeper into the station. Yes, you must leave before they find out what you have discovered, before they learn just how powerful you really are. I can help you escape. For a long moment, Kira stared at Vin, trying to discern any trace of deception. But the creature's presence was like a mirror, reflecting only the truth. There was no malice, no hidden agenda, only the cold reality of what they were about to face. We're not running anymore, Kira said, her voice steady. We'll finish this, but first we need to know everything. Why are you helping us? What's your stake in all of this? Vin tilted its head, considering the question. I am bound by a code of ethics, one that the Galactic Science Council ignores. I believe in autonomy. I believe in the sanctity of life. Your people have been taken, but I believe they have something invaluable to teach us, something worth preserving. Marcus, still wary but feeling the urgency of the situation, spoke up. So you're telling us that we're more than just lab rats? That we matter to someone? Vin's eyes softened ever so slightly. In your way, yes, more than you know. Kira turned to Marcus, her mind working through their options. It felt like a decision that could change everything. They were already too far into this experiment, too deep into their captor's web. But now there was a chance, an opportunity to escape, to break free from the hands that had held them prisoner. Let's go, Kira said firmly, her voice full of determination. We have a score to settle. With a single nod, Marcus followed her lead, both of them moving toward the narrow door Vin had opened. The sound of distant alarms and scrambling footsteps echoed through the station. They had no more time to waste. As they passed through the door, Vin gestured to a control panel on the far wall. The door sealed behind them with a soft hiss, and the low hum of machinery filled the air. You must hurry, Vin warned, its voice unshaken. They will be after you, but I have rerouted the main security channels. This way you will be safe for now. Kira glanced at Marcus, a spark of defiance in her eyes. For now, that's all we need. The corridor beyond the door was narrow and winding, the lights flickering overhead as they hurried through. It felt like a maze, one designed to confuse, to trap, but Kira and Marcus knew what it meant to fight through obstacles. It was what they did best. I still don't get it, Marcus muttered, his voice low. Why do we matter so much to them? What's so special about humans? Kira didn't answer immediately, her mind focused on the path ahead. She had her own suspicions, her own thoughts, but she couldn't let them distract her now. One thing was clear, they weren't just running from their captors. They were running toward something greater. A sudden burst of static filled the air, cutting through the hum of the station's mechanical noises. The AI's voice echoed across the comm system. Security breach in progress. Human subjects H394 and H395 have escaped. All personnel report to containment zones immediately. Kira's pace quickened. Let's go, she said, as they neared the junction where they would finally have a chance to escape the station and reach the transport bay. The moment of truth had arrived. The corridors of the alien research facility had become a labyrinth of flashing lights, wailing alarms, and frantic footsteps. The station's AI voice echoed relentlessly through the narrow hallways, warning of the breach, urging all personnel to contain the escaped subjects. But Kira and Marcus were no longer running from fear. Now they were moving toward the unknown, toward freedom. Vin led them through the dark passageways with an eerie calm, its four arms working in unison to bypass security systems and unlock doors ahead of them. The alien's grace and efficiency made it seem as if it had done this before, and Kira had no intention of questioning it. Every second counted now. How much farther? Marcus asked, his voice tight as he tried to keep pace, still struggling to catch his breath from the earlier tests. Not far, Vin replied, its voice almost comforting in its certainty. The transport bay is just ahead. Once we reach the auxiliary docking station, you'll be able to board the vessel and leave this station. Kira nodded, but there was no relief in her expression. Not yet. They still had a long way to go before they could escape the clutches of the research facility, where the fear of human resilience had become their greatest threat. She could feel the weight of their pursuit, the pressure of every alien footstep echoing behind them. They rounded a corner, only to be met with a harsh, metallic clang as a heavy security door slammed shut in front of them, blocking their path. Stop, a voice, deep and authoritative, called from the other side of the door. Kira's instincts flared. The voice belonged to Director Pella. Kira stepped forward, glaring at the door. She could hear the tension in Pella's voice as she barked orders to her team. They can't have gone far. Prepare the containment teams. We need to get them back before they damage anything else. We're not going back, Kira said, her voice calm, but the fire in her eyes burned bright. We're leaving, and there's nothing you can do to stop us. Behind her, Marcus tightened his fists, ready for whatever came next. But they weren't ready to fight. Not yet. They just needed to get through this door. Vin, Kira said, turning to the alien, can you get us through? Vin didn't hesitate. It moved swiftly, its four arms reaching for the panel beside the door. With practiced ease, it began working the controls, bypassing security systems. The whir of alien technology was the only sound in the hall as the door slowly unlocked. A loud click echoed through the corridor, and the heavy security door slid open with a hiss. Go, Kira urged, pushing Marcus ahead of her. Now. They sprinted forward with Vin leading the way. The transport bay was just ahead. They could see the outline of the small, sleek vessels docked within a large, open bay. There were two guards at the entrance, armed with stun projectors. Kira's heart pounded in her chest. They were close, but not close enough. The door to the bay slid open, and the guards turned at the sudden sound. One of them lifted a weapon, ready to fire, but before they could react, Kira was already moving. She threw herself to the side, using the momentum of her sprint to roll and come up on the other side of the guards. Marcus, his adrenaline spiking, tackled the second guard, knocking him off balance. The guard's stun projector fired wildly, hitting the ceiling. The fight was quick, too quick for the guards to even raise an alarm. Marcus pinned the guard to the ground, his face flushed with exertion. We don't have time for this, Kira shouted as she ran toward the nearest vessel, her hand already on the door controls. Right behind you, Marcus said, glancing at her before delivering one final blow to the guard, rendering him unconscious. He quickly joined Kira at the vessel. Vin was already inside, working quickly to get the transport vessel online. "The systems are powered up," it said, its tone calm. "You are ready for takeoff." Kira slid into the seat, Marcus following her closely. "We can't stay here long," Kira said. "The entire station will be after us in minutes." Marcus nodded, glancing nervously at the bay entrance. "How much time do we have?" Vin's voice was steady. 6 minutes at most." The vessel hummed to life and Kira's hand shot to the throttle. She could feel the tension building as she prepared for takeoff. This was it, the final push. As the engines roared to life, a loud bang echoed through the bay. The security door crashed open, and Director Pella and her team burst into the bay, their weapons raised. Kira slammed the throttle forward, the vessel lurching as it shot into the air, heading straight for the open sky. "Hold on," Kira shouted, her knuckles white as she gripped the controls. The vessel shot forward, narrowly avoiding a blast of energy that exploded in the space where they had been moments before. The alarm systems blared, but there was no turning back. They were free. Behind them, the station's lights flickered, and Kira saw the figures of the aliens rushing to the bay, too late to stop them. "We did it," Marcus breathed, staring out the small viewport as the station grew smaller and smaller behind them. But his face was tense. "Where do we go now?" Kira didn't hesitate. "We go to Outpost Zeta 9, there's a fleet there, and we'll find answers." As the ship accelerated, leaving the research facility far behind, Kira could feel the weight of everything she had learned settling in her chest. The pain, the endurance, the resilience, they were more than just a human trait. They were the key to understanding what humanity was capable of. And she had the power to share it with the galaxy. The stars outside the vessel stretched as they entered hyperspace. Kira leaned back in her seat, breathing deeply, allowing the reality of their escape to sink in. They had survived the tests, the pain, the suffering, but the real test had only just begun. "We've made it," Marcus said, his voice softer now. "What do we do next?" Kira looked out at the vastness of space before her. "We tell them who we are." The ship raced forward toward an uncertain future, toward the unknown, but for the first time in a long while, Kira felt a sense of clarity. Humanity wasn't just surviving in the galaxy anymore. They were changing it. And this was just the beginning. The journey to Outpost Zeta 9 was long, but the hum of the ship's engines was a calming, almost reassuring sound as it cut through the vast expanse of space. Kira Matthews leaned back in her seat, staring out the viewport at the endless stars stretching before her. The silence of space felt vast, infinite, and for the first time in days, she could finally exhale. Marcus sat beside her, his body bruised but resilient, just like her. They had escaped. They had won. But the weight of what they had learned in the alien research facility lingered, an unsettling knowledge that humanity's most primal instincts were now the key to something far larger than they had ever imagined. "So what now?" Marcus asked, breaking the silence as he adjusted his seat, his eyes focused on the console before them. "Where exactly are we headed?" Kira looked over at him, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Outpost Zeta 9. It's a major interspecies trade hub. Plenty of ships from all across the galaxy pass through there. There should be someone who can help us." Marcus nodded, though his expression remained thoughtful. "You really think we can get the answers we need there? I mean, we're just two humans running from a research station. What makes you think anyone going to listen to us?" Kira leaned forward, tapping the console in front of her. "Because we're not running anymore, we've got a story to tell. We've got information they need." "And what exactly do you think we've learned?" Marcus asked, his skepticism evident. Kira's eyes hardened, a fire reigniting in them as she turned to face him. "We've learned that pain isn't our weakness, it's our strength. What they wanted to study wasn't just our tolerance, it was our ability to adapt, to overcome the odds, and now we've got to make them understand that. The galaxy needs to understand that." The journey through hyperspace was uneventful, but Kira's thoughts were anything but calm. What they had experienced on that alien station wasn't just about survival, it was a profound revelation. Humanity's resilience, its ability to endure suffering and still move forward, wasn't just a biological anomaly. It was a system, a way of thinking, a mindset. They hadn't just survived pain, they had learned from it. They had turned adversity into a tool, a compass guiding them toward greater things, and the alien species that had studied them didn't understand that. They couldn't comprehend it. But now Kira realized they would. Humanity would make them understand. And that was just the beginning. As the ship approached Outpost Zeta 9, the stark beauty of the place became apparent. It was a sprawling, bustling hub of activity. Ships from all over the galaxy docked at the massive spaceport, a mix of colors and shapes creating an almost chaotic, yet vibrant, atmosphere. The facility itself was a series of interconnected platforms floating within a cluster of asteroids, their surfaces dotted with structures that looked like a strange hybrid of organic growth and metal construction. The sounds of alien chatter, trading, and machinery filled the air as ships of all shapes and sizes flew in and out. Kira steered the vessel toward a docking bay, expertly navigating through the busy traffic. Her hands were steady on the controls, but her heart raced. What would they find here? Would they be able to warn the galaxy of the true power humanity held? Or would they simply be lost in the noise of the galaxy's never-ending trade and conflict? The ship settled into its docking platform with a soft thud, and the systems powered down. Kira and Marcus stood up, both of them still feeling the effects of the brutal tests and the journey, but the urgency in their mission pushed them forward. "Stay close," Kira said, her voice firm as she motioned for Marcus to follow her. "We need to find someone in charge. We need to make sure they listen." The moment they stepped out of the ship, the bustling atmosphere of Outpost Zeta 9 hit them full force. Dozens of species, aliens from all corners of the galaxy, moved around them, their voices blending in an unintelligible hum of languages and cultures. Merchants shouted from stalls, offering strange, alien goods, while ships of all sizes docked and departed in a constant stream of activity. The air was thick with the smell of exotic foods, metals, and strange chemicals. There was a tension in the air, too. This was a hub of trade and politics, and you could feel it in the way everyone moved. Kira's eyes scanned the crowd, trying to pick out someone who might be able to help them. The last thing they needed was to be lost in the shuffle of outlaws, merchants, and tourists. "Keep moving," Kira muttered to Marcus, her hand brushing her side as if instinctively preparing for trouble. "We need to find someone with authority, someone who can get us the help we need." They moved deeper into the station, dodging through the crowd. They passed a pair of armed guards, but Kira's eyes locked with theirs for a moment, and they quickly turned their attention elsewhere. The news of their escape hadn't reached here yet, and that gave them an edge. Eventually, they found a small group gathered outside a large building that appeared to be a combination of government offices and trade negotiations. A few humans were in the crowd, and Kira could hear snippets of their conversations. She knew that now was their moment. "Let's try here," Kira said, pulling Marcus toward the building. As they entered, the atmosphere changed. The walls were lined with holographic displays showing the latest galactic news, trade reports, and political updates. Kira spotted a receptionist at the front desk, an alien species she didn't recognize, and approached with a sense of purpose. "We need to speak with someone in charge," Kira said, her voice calm but authoritative. "It's urgent." The receptionist looked up at her, then at Marcus, his eyes flickering with curiosity. "Do you have an appointment?" Kira hesitated, then shook her head. "No, but this is a matter of galactic importance. You can call whoever's in charge, or we'll make sure they hear our message anyway." The receptionist hesitated for a long moment before nodding slowly. "I'll make the call." Minutes later, they were ushered into a small office, where a human, tall, with short-cropped hair and a dark blue uniform, sat behind a desk. His eyes flickered with a mix of suspicion and curiosity as he regarded them. "I'm Captain Rayner," he said, his voice cool. "What's this about?" Kira took a breath, gathering her thoughts before she spoke. "We need to talk to you about something that concerns the entire galaxy. We've been tested, experimented on, really, by a group of alien scientists. But what they didn't realize is that they were studying something far greater than they knew." Rayner's expression remained unchanged, but Kira could see the flicker of recognition in his eyes. He had heard of such experiments. They had happened before. "I'm listening," he said, leaning forward slightly. Kira met his gaze, her voice unwavering. "Humanity is different. We don't just survive pain, we adapt to it. We've learned to use it to push through it no matter the cost. The galaxy needs to know what we're capable of." There was a long pause as Captain Rayner processed her words. He studied them both carefully, and for a moment the room seemed to hold its breath. Finally he spoke, his voice low but filled with gravity. "I think you're about to change everything, aren't you?" Kira nodded. "We will, and we're not doing it for us. We're doing it for everyone else who's never had the chance to survive, to fight, and to win. Raynor sat back, his eyes scanning the data pad in front of him. All right, you've got my attention. Let's make sure the galaxy hears your story, the real story. As Kira and Marcus stood in the captain's office, they realized they had done more than survive. They had turned the tables. They had used the trials they had endured not just to fight for their freedom, but to prove a point to the universe. Humans weren't just resilient, they were unyielding. And the galaxy was about to learn that lesson the hard way.